guys, it's Tasha. Thank you so much for stopping over and joining me in my little corner of the internet. Today, I want to share with you some suggestions on how to better connect with deity and how to determine which deities or gods or goddesses are calling out to you. Amber, a beautiful, amazing spirit, had commented on one of my videos recently asking me if I would do a video sharing about how I've connected with deity and how others can kind of determine which deities we're calling to them. And I thought that was an awesome idea. So Amber, this one's for you. Thank you for the amazing suggestion. Just gonna kind of share from my own experience of being a witch for the past bazillion years and just what I've learned along the way, and hopefully that will help you in your own quest to connect with deity. But before we begin, I have very important news for y'all and some cuteness. So I want to show you the newest member of our family. This is little Dublin. He's equal parts preciousness and equal parts evil. And he's absolutely wonderful. So he's just going to hang out with us today while we talk about the gods. So first and foremost, you don't need to worship anything. You don't need to have a goddess or god. You do not need to believe in anything to be a witch. As long as you believe in yourself, you're pretty much on the right track. So that's the first thing. If you don't connect with the divine in any way, you're not broken. Your witchcraft isn't broken. It's just, that's okay. It's fine. Keep doing what you're doing. Sometimes I think we put pressure on ourselves if we have this checklist when we first start off being a witch. It's like, find my familiar spirit, find my goddess and god, that mother god or mother spirit, father spirit, and all these kind of things that we feel we have to do to be witches. And that's just not how witchcraft works. I mean, honestly, it's a very individualized practice. So how you determine and how you feel about higher powers is completely subjective to you. No one can tell you how to or how not to worship anything. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is just advice from my own experience, and your experiences will be different, but also some will probably be similar. So hopefully some of this will help you along your path. So start simple. I have my little notebook here. Start simple. So if you have just come to this path, welcome. Don't pressure yourself to become some professor in mythology. Don't pressure yourself to know all the myths of all the gods and to just suddenly know who to worship. It doesn't really work that way, I don't think. At least it didn't for me. For a really long time, I mainly kind of worked with the moon and the sun and the earth, the forest, things that were familiar to me, things that have been part of the human experience since the beginning of humans, and that worked for a long time. It made me feel comfortable. It made me feel safe. The woods were a sacred space. They still are. Being outside in the moonlight, I felt like I was connecting to a higher power, and just kind of being in the sun and soaking up all that good energy also made me feel connected to a higher power. So you can start very, very basic and very simple. You can also look at your interest. So say you are someone who, if you're stressed out, you just need to go for a walk in the woods and you feel immediately better. Your soul feels fed, you feel happy and content, then maybe the woods are calling to you, and it could be a god or goddess of the forest who you're meant to be working with. So maybe it's Pan. Maybe Pan's calling to you through the forest and you're feeling connected there. Maybe you feel a deep connection with fairies and fairy lore. So maybe you want to look into Celtic goddesses and gods. You maybe love dogs. Maybe seeing little Dublin just made your heart melt. And you love dogs and you love the energy of dogs. Well, maybe that could be a sign that you could work with either a dog-headed being like Anubis, or maybe it could be a goddess like Hecate, who is the mother of our canine friends. Cats could be Bastet or Bast. So there's Freya. So, start with you. That's going to be important. I think the deities that we worship are a big representation of who we are as people. So think about yourself and what you're interested in, and then start there. See which gods kind of fit that. Keep it really simple. Keep it part of your personality. You can start exploring that way. Or consider if I just say a goddess's name, if I just say goddess, does a name come to mind? Do you immediately think Aphrodite or Gaia or Selene or Caridwen? Consider that. Consider that those names. Why is that name resonating with you? Why is when someone says Aphrodite, your heart feels happy and you feel a little electric pulse in your blood? That could be the goddess calling out to you. If you find yourself randomly thinking about a certain god or goddess, this has recently started to happen to me with Aphrodite. Never really worked with Aphrodite in the past a whole lot. I've always kind of been interested in her, but more just reading her myths and all that stuff. But recently, the name Aphrodite will just kind of pop into my head. And that's weird and not part of my normal thought process. So it stands out to me. And then people around you randomly bring up that goddess, or they're talking about different mythologies that kind of surround her. Or say you suddenly think about Bridget, and then you run into someone whose name's Bridget. And then you're having a conversation at work and someone mentions Bridget, whether it's a human or the being or whatever, the saint, whatever. That, to me, is a sign that you are being called to by that particular deity, because they're kind of putting themselves in your life. You can also look for other signs like in objects and patterns in animals. So where I live in Canada, it's pretty rural. It's a rural province, so there's all kinds of deer here, okay? All kinds. So seeing a deer at my work in the middle of an area that's highly populated with deer isn't necessarily to me a sign that the horned god is around. Like, I see a deer and it's a deer. But where I live, there seems to be, I've lived here for almost 10 years. I've never seen a deer on this side of the highway where I am. So if I saw a deer just trapezing through my yard on a little gallop, I would, that would stand out to me. That would resonate with me a little bit. Like, okay, maybe someone's trying to connect with me. Same as with Odin, who has forever been extremely distant from me. I have wanted to connect with him for so long, and it's never happening. It will happen eventually because I'm a persistent being. But, if suddenly I saw a crow, I'm not going to think that's Odin, because you're going to see crows in your day-to-day life. However, if you saw a one-eyed crow, or you saw a big murder of crows that came out of nowhere, or something a little bit unusual, then maybe that's a sign. Or owls, like if you don't typically see owls in the daytime and suddenly you do see one in the daytime, well, maybe that's Athena reaching out to you. So I try my best not to allow myself to just believe everything is a sign, because I don't think that that's true. I don't think that happens. I really think it has to be kind of special. But you can definitely look for little signs and patterns. People saying that name over and over again, or conversations coming up that really kind of involve the associations of that certain god or goddess. Definitely keep an eye out for that, or just when weird things kind of happen. But don't put pressure on yourself to feel anything. It's not a race, it's a journey. And it's not like our lives and our spiritual experience is a journey. Like, we're on, hopefully, if you get to live to old age, a very, very long journey. So it's going to take time to connect, and that's okay. That's totally okay. And just because someone else has a deep connection with a god that you really admire or like, doesn't make them any more special than you. It doesn't make them any more connected than you. I think that a lot of times when it comes to the divine, people are so passionate about the gods and goddesses that they worship that they kind of gatekeep them, and they don't want just everybody worshiping them. And I can understand that, because when you care about anything, you want to protect it, but don't let that dissuade you from continuing your growth. No one has a right to tell you who you can and can't worship, or whether or not you're worthy of worshiping them, unless they've Like they can't tell you that. It's about your experience. So it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. If you feel connected, that's what matters. I also think that it's okay to be interested in gods or goddesses of different cultures. As long as you are being respectful to that culture and you're not appropriating it, there's nothing wrong with having an interest. For example, I have a video on Anubis. I work with Anubis. I dedicated my career to him. And I am not of that ethnic origin, but I treat it with respect, and I don't pretend to be an expert, and I don't pretend to have some special connection there. Anybody can have that connection. So I think it's safe and okay to explore deities from other cultures and countries as long as you do it in the right way. So don't let anybody really gatekeep you away. Sometimes deities will come to us in dreams. So some people will have dreams about a particular god or goddess that's really, really vivid. And that could be a sign. So you could be having dreams about them all the time. You could be, before you go to bed, you could ask some questions, and then he's in the puppy biting stage, as you can see. You could ask questions and then see if your dreams will answer them. And if you don't, that's okay too. Remember, you don't remember all your dreams. You remember the dreams pretty much before you wake up. So don't think that it's not working, because you could be getting little answers there that might resurface later on. You can also use oracle cards. I like to do that sometimes, where I will ask one of my gods a question and I'll pull a card and I'll just kind of consider that to be an answer from them. And if you're searching for a god or a particular deity, pull an oracle card. Maybe that card will have an animal associated with them on it, or a symbol associated with them on it. It's a lot of digging. I wish that we all could just have an extremely substantial and mythical and extraordinary experience with the divine, where it's cut and dry and you know 100% that that's the god for you. I don't think that happens to a lot of people. I'm not discounting anybody who has had visions or has had deities visit them in circle or what have you. I'm absolutely think that can happen. It's never happened to me. I've never ever had a real clear, like, definitive, this god is this, you know. So it's kind of touch and go, and it's work. So there's a reason that you're being called, though, right? There's a reason you're being called to search out deities. So if you're already looking, you're on the right path. So there's a reason for that. And I think that it's okay to try out different deities, to experiment. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't think that every relationship with different gods and goddesses lasts forever. Like friendships, sometimes you part ways. That's okay too. So you may find yourself initially working with a deity. You may think, oh my gosh, Bridget's my girl. And then you get working with Bridget and you realize, no, I think I misinterpreted that. It's a different hearth goddess. That's okay. That's fine. I don't think the gods are really going to lose sleep over you going to the right person. You can journal. That's another really great way to connect with them. So start just journaling. You can write them a letter. You can write the universe a letter and ask for a sign. Just put it out there. I'm looking for a sign to who should I be with? Who's my god? And ask the universe. See what comes your way. So that's definitely an option. Don't judge who you feel called to. So in my experience, Nyx was the first goddess that I was ever called to, and she's kind of considered a darker goddess simply by being a goddess of the night. And back in the early 2000s, late 90s, when I was coming up in the craft, it was like, no, you only worshipped light gods and goddesses. You didn't worship any dark gods and goddesses, and you know, it was all harm none. And I had some very practiced people tell me that I wasn't on the right path, and I was a bad person for worshiping Nyx and wanting to get to know her better. And that really bothered me until I realized that I just didn't give a shit. And I felt connected to her, and I just kind of ditched those people and moved on with my life, and I've been working with her ever since. So don't feel intimidated or scared to approach a being. It's like with Lucifer. I like to work with Lucifer, leave him little offerings. My experience with that deity is that he's just kind of fun and bad and naughty, and you know, it's fine. Other people would be like, oh my gosh, you work with Lucifer, you're definitely evil. Who cares? Work with who you feel called to. So don't judge how you feel or who you feel called to. Just roll with it. Some people have visions and hear the voice of deity. Like I say, I don't, but that doesn't mean you should discount if you do. If you are meditating and you've got a really clear message, take that as a sign. Take that as an indication. Another great way to connect more is once you kind of have a deity in mind is to embody that deity. So for example, if I wanted to embody Anubis for the day, I would make sure that I was going to be more empathetic and listening and gentle and kind and be there to comfort people. If I wanted to embody Odin for the day, maybe a day where I have to go argue about something, or I got to state my mind, or I'm a little bit nervous, I'll try to embody Odin and think, how would Odin handle this? You know, is he going to let someone push him around? Probably not. So you can do that. You can think about different ways the gods are, what they are associated with, what their personalities are like. We're very fortunate that there's a lot of rich mythology in our world, and embody that energy for the day and see how that changes your perspective and see how that changes how you connect with deity. Gods love altars. We are working with the old gods, people. And back in the day, they had temples, they had parades, they had crazy orgies, they had parties, they had all kinds of stuff going on. Christianity kind of swept that all under the rug, and then for a long time, they were being worshipped in a smaller way. I think the old gods missed the way things were, and I think a great way to honor them is to make a little altar or shrine to them. You don't need to have statues of the deity. If you wanted to work with Aphrodite and you had a scallop shell, use that. If you wanted to work with Anubis and you have a bone or a skull or a piece of obsidian or jet, use that. It doesn't have to be fancy, it just has to have intention. And if you put your intention into it, I really do believe that you're housing your gods there. So they love altars. So make little altars. They can be little secret altars. It could be something that you keep in your pocket to honor them. It can be something just a secret between you and your deity if you're in the broom closet. But definitely little altars are a great way to open yourself up. Another way to connect is through bibliomancy. So I really like poetry because I think poetry is almost like spell work. It paints a beautiful picture. It manifests something when you read it. So you could grab a book of poems and flip around and see what poem you pick or what word your finger lands on. You do it with any book. I've done it with Harry Potter books. And then go from there and see where that leads you. It's a giant rabbit hole. So what else do I have? So these are just a couple of gods that I work with and how I've kind of felt a connection to them. So with Anubis, I was always drawn to him for a long time. And he was the first god that I really kind of had a deep connection with. And I just remember when my grandfather died, I was in the shower, unaware that he died. And I just immediately in my mind's eye, I just kind of started thinking about Anubis, and I had this feeling of kind of calm come over me and comfort, and I just instinctively knew he died. And then shortly after, my father called and told me he died. So that was when I first realized, okay, there's more to this. But it wasn't anything intense. I didn't see him standing in front of me. I didn't really hear his voice in my head. It was just kind of like this thought that popped into my brain out of nowhere. Nyx, the night sky. Like many witches, I've been infatuated with the night sky since childhood. It just ended up making sense that I would find comfort and mothering from something that I found comfort and mothering from my whole life. So that's kind of how that started with her. With Lucifer, it's just, you know, I'd light little candles for him and seeing the flames jump and move around. Could be wind, could be drafts, could be a bad wick, could be crazy wax. But it was enough for me to kind of feel like, maybe I'm making a connection there. Bridget, this isn't my story, but my friend Morgan channels her for poetry. And he was just kind of wanting to write a poem, and he channeled her and felt very drawn to her. So that's something you can do. With Mary, the Virgin Mary, another deity that I work with who's of Christian faith, which is another point that I don't think it matters if a god belongs to Christianity or is a pagan god or whatever. I think if you feel a connection there, that's what matters. But with her, it was just, I remember being a little kid and being forced to go to church. and I would go into the chapel for the Virgin Mary. And I remember one day I was in there by myself and I just smelt roses, like so strong. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And in my mind and in my heart, maybe that was her. So just little things. So maybe you're thinking about a mother goddess and that you smell a perfume, or you smell roses, or you smell cigarettes. Who knows? That could be a sign. So just pay attention with all of your senses. You're going to be on high alert. And I wrote Odin down here because he's still a mystery to me. I'm still trying to figure that out. The horned god. So this is an example of another way you can be unexpectedly surprised. I've been recently going through some training with a friend, and through that training I'm connecting kind of a lot more to my roots and when I came into witchcraft, and I've been starting to want to work more with the horned god, and in the aspect of like the Lord of the Forest, or kind of like Pan-like, if you will, or what have you. And here in Canada, we've got a lot of deer and we've got a lot of moose. So to me, that's the horned god. That's how he's represented in nature. And then I wasn't thinking much of it. And one day I was thinking about the horned god, and my friend messaged me and said, I have a moose jaw, and would you like to have it? And that was enough for me to feel like, okay, there's something here. What are the odds that she would call me? The same day I was thinking about the horned god, I was talking to a friend about associating the horned god with the moose, and there's my friend offering me a beautiful piece of an actual moose that she brought back from Newfoundland. So that's how weird things can happen. So if you have a friend, or that you've been thinking about a goddess associated with an owl, and their friend gives you an owl, well, maybe that is a sign from them. So it can come in all kinds of really normal ways that if you weren't paying attention, you could miss. They're tricky like that. Do you. So just do you. Do what feels good to you. That's really the best advice I can give you, which is also like no advice at all, but just keep doing what you're doing. If you feel a connection, keep going with that connection. See where it takes you. You can also connect with the deities of your ancestors. So you could start there. You know your family tree, you could take a look where your family is from. I did Ancestry DNA, and then that kind of led me more into the Celtic gods, which I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to in my path. And now I'm kind of starting to learn more about them and feel more connected to them by knowing that that's likely who a lot of my ancestors worship, as well as the Norse gods. So it's just kind of an easier way to feel connected, knowing that somewhere down the line, somebody in my blood worship probably those gods. So you can do it that way too. You can learn a little bit about your own DNA, your own history, and use that as a jumping off point on where to begin. You can look for the gods in museums, libraries, out in public. I mean, I know right now with COVID, that's really hard to do, but hopefully if the world goes back to normal someday, if you're in a library and you come across a book and you open it up and it's about Odin, maybe that's Odin. Or if you're in a museum and you see an old statue or something related to an old god, keep that in your mind. So there's a lot of science all around you. Be critical of them. Don't just accept everything as an indication that it's deity. But I think that you'll find through searching and seeking and continuing on your journey that you will find the god or goddess that you're meant to work with. And sometimes that god or goddess is you, and that's okay too, because you are your own god or your own goddess. That's the beauty of being witch. You're powerful, you're magical, and you're amazing. So just keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions on how to connect or how you've connected, I would love to hear about it, and I'm sure other people would love to hear your experiences as well. So please use the comments below as your medium to share your stories, because I'd love to hear them. That's it for now. I hope this video was helpful. This little guy is falling asleep. I'll just kind of wake him up for one more hello. He's so cute. And I will talk to you guys later. So thanks for watching and have an amazing day and happy hunting. Bye.